President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump heading back to the White House today after visiting troops and their families at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. During an address to the troops, President Trump talked about the mission to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro.
That night, the entire world saw what the full military might of the U.S. military is capable of. That was an unbelievable operation, but that was a smaller operation. But it was so precise, so incredible. Nobody thought a thing like that could happen. They even talk about the discombobulator because they never got a shot off. The Russian equipment didn't work. The Chinese equipment didn't work. Everyone's trying to figure out why it didn't work. Someday you're going to find out. But it didn't work.
Let's bring in CBS News White House correspondent Willie James Inman joining us live. Willie, great to be with you. What were your key takeaways from the president's speech to the troops today?
Hey there, Liz. Good to be with you from West Palm Beach, Florida. The president is headed here to remain through the weekend, as he typically does during these winter months. Look, this speech is typically a victory lap of sorts, a pat on the back for American troops. But if you took a listen to it and you looked at it, it looked very similar to a campaign rally that you see oftentimes on the campaign trail leading up to the presidential election. We know, of course, the president is out on the stump to speak directly to voters ahead of the midterm election. And he did discuss the midterm often throughout this speech. And he said in his remarks that if Democrats win, that the military will be severely misserved and that Democrats would change Fort Bragg's name. We, of course, know that Fort Bragg was Fort Liberty a couple of years ago, changed under the Biden administration. It was Fort Bragg before that. So the name was changed after the Biden administration. It was changed last year, in fact. So the president not only signaling off some of the successes that he's seen with his administration, talking about the stock market, but saying that he's rebuilt the military and that he would do a better job and Republicans would do a better job at serving military members. Here's a bit of what the president said just moments ago.
We are feared by the enemies all over the globe. They fear us. And, you know, I don't like to say fear, but sometimes you have to have fear because that's the only thing that really will get the situation taken care of. We have a situation right now where we sent a very big carrier group to Iran. I'd love to see if we could make a deal. They've been difficult to make a deal. I thought we would have had a deal last time. They wish they did, and that's where we did Midnight Hammer.
Now, the president mentioning Iran there as that military buildup in the region not far from Iran continues with options on the table, all options on the table. The White House maintains for the president to make a decision there. We have seen those conversations with the U.S. and intermediaries serving in between both sides to come up with some type of deal, as the president mentioned. But on top of that, the president talked about Operation Absolute Resolve, that operation to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife and bring both of them to the United States to be prosecuted in U.S. courts. The president was there to meet some of the military members that took part in that campaign. He mentioned that some of them were injured, but there were no deaths and no American deaths in that operation. And one other interesting moment, I mentioned the president talked about the midterms. He brought up on stage Republican U.S. Senate candidate in North Carolina, Michael Whatley, on stage to speak for a few moments. The reason why that is so interesting, because typically political candidates running for races like the U.S. Senate, for instance, stray away from giving any type of political remarks at military installations controlled by the Department of Defense. It's unclear what policies or whatnot were violated there, if any, but still an interesting moment with the president blasting former Republican governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, who is also running for U.S. Senate in that state list.
All right, Willie James Inman, thank you so much.